I'm delighted to open this conversation today with Dr. Pinnaree Tea-makorn, whom I first met actually several years ago. I'm not quite sure how many, but time flies. But
Mhm.
some years ago, during some work I was doing with Sassin Business School in Bangkok, and really to me feels like a wonderful twist of fate that Pin today is a professor in AI at Sassin as our paths converge again here at this crucial moment in educational transformation. So today I want to set a high ambitious level for the conversation, whatever that means. But I would love to embark in a discussion that goes beyond just incremental change. Actually, I'm all about exploring completely new ways of reimagining everything in our world. And today it's about our educational systems that I would love to reimagine. So let's park all our biases and historical knowledge. Everything is possible in this conversation. Everything. There are no
Sure.
limits. And that we're facing these unprecedented technological advancements, particularly in AI. And we have both the opportunity, but in my opinion, also a responsibility to fundamentally rethink how we approach learning and teaching and helping every human really at a global scale to improve their employability, but also to inspire their entrepreneurial mindset. I believe many of us will need to create our own jobs rather than apply for jobs. Maybe it's a combination of both in the future, as it is today. So Pin is here with us today, bringing her unique perspective, which I'm very excited to explore and get to tap into. That combines a deep expertise in AI strategy with hands-on experience in action learning through initiatives like, and I've mostly read about this Pin. I will maybe hear
Mhm.
about it in New Ventures Lab, so maybe we can tap into that a little bit and hear more about that. And this positions Pin perfectly to help us navigate these waters. So we'll explore everything, I think, or try to at least, from the integration of AI tools in hands-on learning and ensuring inclusivity in AI education as well. And but always keeping the human element front and center and in the heart of this educational transformation. So we're not just talking about technology, we're really talking about, in my view, the future of human learning and development, which makes me very excited. And I'm pretty sure we have that in common. So, Pin, before we start to unbox all of these big topics, and we'll see how far we get, but I would love for you to introduce yourself first, not only your professional role today and the pathway that's taken you there, but also what fuels your passionate work today. Why do you do what you do? Over to you, Pin, and thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Lars. Yeah, I think it's been really nice that I got to know you way before any of this happens, right? I think I was still a PhD student back then,
Yeah.
nearly graduating at the time. So yeah, I think like quick background. So born and raised in Bangkok, Thailand. Got a scholarship, a government scholarship at the end of my high school. So that gives me the opportunity to study wherever I want. So I chose the United States, um, and then went to Stanford University for undergraduate studies. I did electrical engineering as my major. Um, took one machine learning class since it was something that everyone did. So that's kind of like my first exposure to AI back then, right? I still didn't know what AI is. And then I decided to stay on for grad school, given there's a research group that I really enjoyed working with. So I continued in the same department. Around in my third year, the end of my second year, I kind of had a change of heart. So I decided I switched groups and then work found more interest in using the technical and computational methods to on social psychology problems. So I worked with a business school professor at the GSB at Stanford. So that's kind of like a big shift where, instead of, purely engineering, I did more of an interdisciplinary work. Graduated still in the same school. The department was nice enough to let me stay, even though my thesis was completely, have nothing about electricity in it except the computers that run it. And then and then yeah, I came back because of the pandemic, pretty much kind of like, okay, the US looks really dangerous, so I decided I'll go home. And then I think like during that time I did, some exploration on the VC world, design thinking, all those like fancy words out there. And then like did machine learning consulting business for a bit when I was graduating. But then after that, with some turns of luck, I decided to try out academia as well, and turns out that I enjoy that a lot. I think that the turning point was when I taught my first class on AI and business, which is where I basically teach basic AI concepts for, MBA students, not necessarily having any technical background on what AI is and how they can utilize them and how would they prepare themselves to be ready to exploit the technology, right? So after that first class, I felt, really, I guess it was a really gratifying experience. So I decided, okay, I guess teaching is not so bad. Doing research is not so bad. So I decided to be in academia, and fast forward, now it's almost 4 years that I'm, a full-time faculty here at Sussin. Also, we also started our endeavor on the AI space as well, because we realize that AI is coming to change revolutionize education pretty much, right? Including us, especially in BAs, where students can use ChatGPT to answer almost everything that we teach them. So yeah, and of course, like not only how AI impact our curriculum and our students, but also how AI can impact the way we work, right? So I guess like I was honored to be appointed the AI strategist for the school. And so that comes with also a lot of responsibility as well, and how I will bring, this entire school forward as well. So that's kind of like a quick, brief background of who I am. So I guess your second question of like, why do I do what I do today, which is a little more simple and complicated in at the same time. So I guess like I started out pretty much very management oriented when I was younger. So I liked, doing projects. I always imagined myself doing business. So my ideal pathway would be get an engineering undergraduate degree, get an MBA for my master's, go work as an executive at whatever company that is, and become pretty much like the CEO. That's kind of like my career path when I was like middle school or high school. But then I guess like luck, gives it a strange spin of turns because, well, given that like I was in more of the academic, competitive path, so I guess I was comfortable with studying as well as having, a few other interests. So when I when I joined, so I guess like when I did a lot of like the projects, extracurriculars, doing, management and stuff, I found myself interested in people. So how people minds work and that sort of stuff. So when I went to Stanford in my first year, in my first quarter there, I took a psychology intro class and I found out that I fell in love with it. So I was grappling with myself for quite a while on whether I wanted to major in engineering or psychology. Decided to stick with engineering, which was more of my comfort zone, and I didn't like writing long stuff very much. So I was like, okay, engineering doesn't have writing, so I'm just gonna stick to that, just like write equations. But then, as we can see that during my grad school, I realized that also pure engineering is probably not what I wanted to do. So that's why I switched schools to pursue the earlier passion that I had about people, about social psychology. You know, like how how the people's minds work, how people interacted with each other. So I think that's pretty much the main theme of what I pursue is how we could understand how people's minds work, how do we interact with each other, as well as another pillar of what I'm really passionate about is how do you translate technical concepts into terms that people who don't have technical background would understand and be able to make use of it. So I think that's the root of pretty much mainly what I do today is teaching AI to people who are non-technical for businesses and stuff. So I would say I won't argue that I'm not very good at teaching, I won't be teaching AI for, people who are already great about AI, right? So that's not what I really want. So my passion lies in more trying to simplify or translate concepts from one domain into the other. I think that's what I really like. And that's what I found out that Chat GPT or, any Gen AI is also doing very well. So yeah, so I guess that's like, who I am in a nutshell.
This is so exciting for so many reasons. We have what 8 billion people that didn't graduate in AI that essentially needs to go through this upskilling to
Right.
maybe just to a low level or maybe to a more advanced level, but that needs this introduction to AI.
Right.
Possibly, but this is one of the things that we'll get to unbox and see how could that happen at scale. But just before we get that far, um, uh, I remember when we were having lunch in Bangkok a long time ago, we discovered quickly we both have an electronics engineering background, and today we both do something completely different. And yet maybe not because we apply whatever way we are thinking about problems and solutions and apply it for the benefit of other humans, hopefully. At least we're certainly trying, but in very different ways. But one thing that I mentioned in the beginning, the New Ventures Lab, which is, I think, catering to the entrepreneurial mindset and skills in people. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the New Ventures Lab is actually part of the course called Action Learning Lab here at Sussin. So essentially, and yeah, this course was designed, way long before I joined. That like Sussin student before they graduate for the MBA program, they have to do a capstone project, and that is what we call the Action Learning Lab. So essentially, the students can use whatever they learn from the MBA to solve real world problems. So we have two arms of that. So the first arm is the kind of like purely consulting arm. So students will be paired with, a large corporate in order to solve those people's problem. They have the option to apply for programs that have joint teams from other schools. So in particular, MIT or the Fudan University from China. So, but those since it's more competitive, so people students have to apply and they'll go through a selection process. But if they get through, they'll get to work with the students from the other university. If the company sponsors them, they will be able to fly to the other country as well. So students really like that. And yeah, or otherwise they'll be paired with a Thai corporate and solve like a local problem on their own with those with the client. So that's like the consulting arm. So the other arm is what we call the New Ventures Lab. Still have kind of like three subsections. So the first one is the sustainability lab where students work on sustainability projects. Pretty open. It could be consulting, could be like new venture or whatever. The second one is the new venture consulting, which is pretty much also consulting, but it's consulting for startups. So student will be paired with a startup and do consulting job for those people. And then the final one, which is the one that I'm overseeing, which I actually adopted it from a previous professor who left who retired from the school, which is students can start their own business, like they can do whatever they want. So but it has to be from scratch. So basically it's kind of like a 0 to point 0.8. It's not a 0 to 1, right? A 0 to point like 0.7 or 0.8. They'll have up to a year in order to form a new business, try to generate revenue, and hopefully that will be a long-term business. As part of those, we also are also introducing kind of like a two sub kind of like two other, subcategory under the new ventures lab. So you start your own business. Now we also partner with a company called Origins, which is a venture builder based in Singapore. So they have those people have deep tech, like deep technology. So they scout deep tech, and then our students will get paired with the team in order to build those businesses. And also we have kind of like an AI lab where students can, choose to work on AI projects, which not is not necessarily have to generate revenue by the end of the project. So this is kind of like what we do. So essentially what I do is I either, be the consultant for these groups of kids, or well, they're not kids anymore, but these group of students, or I pair them up with, professors or professionals who are experts in the area that they need. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much for that introduction. Yeah, one of my hypothesis, I would guess it is. I think it's also, at least reality, the way I see it, is many of us will need to create our own jobs. Maybe not one for life, but it's probably many different jobs and tasks and opportunities throughout life. And that may not involve applying for an existing job, but creating our own opportunities, and helping everybody learn how to do that, and then consider if that's for them or not. I think that's an educational role as well.
Right.
I
Yeah.
don't
So
know how
students
you
learn
see
a
that.
lot. Yeah, the students learn a lot from that process. And there are all types of businesses that they do, right? So I mean, like the lazier ones would, choose for like, creating something and sell it. So like either it's like food, snack, or whatever. Some of them kind of like have backgrounds from family business, so they know the standard process of, getting OEM, doing digital marketing, trying to sell it to their friends and family, and do, traditional businesses. And of course, like um, they get to do hands-on, like face real world problem, and whether to try to find a product market fit, right? So I think that's kind of like the first classic that everyone who does business or in entrepreneurship would face, is like how, I mean, you have your idea of the product, how would you sell it? Who would you sell it to? Those like 4 Ps or whatever that they learn from the MBAs. But I think like, there's some students who do other types of businesses. Like, for example, if they open a restaurant and a bar, then they will have to, they have construction, they have infrastructure, right? So it's like higher investment. So they have to find a way to deal with that. We do have some group of students who, worked on this as their project. And then after that continued on as their business. Some also went out of business. So I think like that's where you really learn, right? On how, why is it failing? Right. So I think like all the real world problems that don't show up on the paper or don't show up in the textbook or cases is where you actually, fight and try to make your business, survive or growing. So I think like students learn a lot more in the process than from studying in the classroom.
Yeah, yeah. One thing I've seen for many years now is that people's expectation in entrepreneurship, either you succeed or you fail, is kind of either you go one way or the other. And if you fail, it's game over. But where the way I see it, reality is fail, 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 and then succeed, and then maybe fail
Yes.
after that,
Yeah.
is actually the
Yeah.
reality. And so we need to change how we perceive what success means, and when it happens.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally correct. I think like a lot of founders are not, are like a lot of successful startup founders do not get like the first, they didn't get the first success in the first go, right? And those who do also have like the other, kind of like the other side of the, it's also might be a bad thing for them, because if you're lucky and you get it going for the first time, and the second time around that you do it, you might not have learned the lessons that other people have learned, and you might fail anyway in your second turn, right? So I think that it's a series of, I think it's a very, I think it's a test of resilience rather than like a test of,
Yeah,
intellects, or, or like your ability or anything, right? It's how do you take feedback, and how do you adjust to that? How far are you willing to go to adjust to your customers, or go wherever the markets go? How far, like how far do you go in converting the customers to go to you, or how far do you go to change yourself to pursue the customer, right? So it's all evolved around like changing.
and always with the customer in mind, right? What is it they actually
Yeah, yeah. What
need?
do they want? Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the toughest thing. That's the toughest thing among like I think like less for MBA students, but more like from the researcher side, because I also work with a different like with another group in university trying to commercialize, research works. And so from the technical point of view, like researchers are proud of our work. I mean, like we're very proud of what we do. And then like, but the market would, want other things that like we don't see that the value in doing those things. But if you wanted to go for the business, then like you have to sacrifice our own
Yeah.
ego. So that's like a big, hurdle for many
Yeah.
people.
Oh, definitely, definitely. That's very exciting. So and now keeping the human 8 billion of us in mind as the end customer of educational offerings, there needs to be different solutions to all these different individual humans, and you're definitely working with, let me call them the elite, or at least the students that really thrive at the top of the educational programs, right? The MBAs, the PhDs, and they will do well. And then there are many, many, many others. They struggle in the education system, and they are actually the ones that I'm very, very excited about working with, designing alternatives. So today, I would love to pick your brain for ideas and new thoughts about in the context of community-driven education. So where community-driven education comes before institution-driven education, yeah? So it's another paradigm. And and let's dive into it. And I'll try to help you if this doesn't make sense, but to me it makes a lot of sense. Let me just mention one example. Non-neurotypicals could be people on the autism spectrum. They struggle with dyslexia. Uh, they cannot afford to go to school, or there are no schools in their local area, and all these things are still realities on our planet for some. And non-neurotypicals account for approximately 25% of the global population. So it's a lot of people that need alternative solutions. So let me take you into a fun little exercise we can do together, Pin.
Yeah.
And I'll just frame the exercise first. And the point of the exercise here we do first is to help us park our existing knowledge about educational programs, and you have a lot of that, and we all bring our biases and all of that. We park that so we can think freely and openly and come up with whole new ideas for community-driven education and what that could be done. Obviously, involving AI to whatever extent that is relevant, but any ideas is welcome here. So let me invite you into this fun little exercise first. um, Imagine that you, Pin, you are working now on designing an education system for a civilization that has just discovered AI. Uh, but this civilization has no existing schools, no traditional educational institutions. They never existed, right? This is challenging to imagine, but they don't exist in this scenario. So, and you just received a call from the government, and let's say we all live in the same imaginary country, and our government call you, out of all people, they call you, and I understand they should. They call you and they want you to take on the role as Minister of Human Development. Human Development, not Minister of Education, because there is no education system, but Minister of Human Development. So they give you, if you accept the role, they give you unlimited resources. And you're probably not used to that. So get used to that. Unlimited resources, no historical constraints. Now, we're fortunate that this government, they think exponentially. They have an abundance mindset. And to get you interested, they are now socializing this idea with you that we may benefit potentially from establishing this learning ecosystem of some sort. It's a community where everybody helps others learn. Whatever that means, they don't know, but it could be an idea to build on. And if you're up for building on this idea, what would be your first three decisions in creating this learning ecosystem? What would enable this? Um, what do you think? Over to you.
So I guess like my first clarification question is when you said that it just discovered AI, like to what extent does this AI cover? Is it
I
like
th I
AI at the
think
present day or
yes, by present date. Yes, let's
okay, so
make that
with
an
all the
assumption.
Gen AI and all these like,
It's
so one
it's
day like
available.
this
It's
thing,
available. Yes,
so one day this thing, all of that become available. It's kind of like
correct.
like the day that ChatGPT came out, pretty much.
Exactly.
Right.
Everything
And
we
then
have
but
today is available. Yes.
this country never had an education system before.
Yeah.
That's what I gather, right?
Yeah.
And so
There's
what are the
no
first
schools, no educational institutions of any sort.
so what are the first three things that I would do, right? That's your
Yeah.
question.
Yes. To establish this learning ecosystem that could scale and become a global learning ecosystem.
Wow, that's a very difficult question. But let me like kind of like talk myself through as well as I develop
Absolutely.
this
Yeah.
idea, right? Because so essentially we need a some sort of so I guess like one good thing is that we don't have any historical baggage, so we can design things that are in AI integrated right away. So I think like that's a good thing. So I think like the first decision that I would do is to tease out the ability of the AI versus the ability of humans, right? What so basically like think about what AI could do, and then second is what AI could do. Second is how people could use AI, right? And then like how what you say, like what humans can do, the things that humans need to be able to do in order to make sure what the AI gives you are valid and stuff. So how to make sure that the AI are used um in a beneficial way. So kind of like teasing out these factors would probably be the first thing I would do because that will be the basics of what we include in the education of the overall education of everything, right? Not just AI out there. Because like of course, because if we can tease that out, then the first things that we need to then the second step would be kind of like plan a I guess like second step would need to be like the goal of the system that we want, right? Supposedly, given it like the education ecosystem that we want to build, what do we want it to be, right? Um do we want people to be able to use AI safely, all the things that objectives that we want people to be able to achieve, like how, given a person who's an adult, I know who has come of age, like what do you want them to be able to achieve, right? Do you want them to be able to use AI or do you just want them to be literate, right? So those are the objectives that we need to set. And then the third step would then be, combining the abilities of AI and the abilities of human and the objectives that we want. Then we start to design what's what the curriculum should be, right? And I think like the first, among that, the designing the curriculum or the ecosystem or the system would be is very extensive. But I think the first thing that I would do is to determine what do kids or people need to learn without AI before they use AI. Because like once you have a very good helper tool, then you probably don't want to be you don't want to torment yourself with like going through all the hard work, right? So I think
Yeah.
That's a very important thing. And how do we motivate people to learn for the sake of learning? I think that's also, I guess, like that goes the first thing in the first step, where how do you encourage people to see the importance of learning, right? To keep learning no matter how old you are. And that would be something I would like, okay, I'm digressing now, but like that would be something that I really want to revolutionize like the current education system, that like and that's also something that is very, very important with the AI development, is that now learning is not just in schools. Like graduating from a school almost means nothing, just a part of giving you a certificate that you're eligible to apply for some jobs. Like the learning happens all over your life, and I think that's the mindset that needs to be injected into this new education system. First thing first is that like we learn for the sake of learning, to make our world not boring, right? And once that mindset it is in, then whatever educational system, and actually it might not even matter what sort of educational system you have, if people strive and seek to develop themselves with like the new knowledge. So that's kind of like what I can think about the first three steps, given it's a live interview.
I love that. Very well done. I love that. And I don't have any particular solutions or
Of course, yeah, it's an open
expectations.
problem.
It's an open problem, but it's one that I'm excited about. This alternative, which is in my dream, it's community driven.
Mm.
And how do you or maybe the question is, do you make people learn, or should they be motivated to learn? And I'm definitely with you totally. If people are not motivated to learn, they're not going to learn. They may
Yeah,
they may persevere and go through a particular program because they have to and they need that
right.
degree or paper. But they need the motivation, and people who are motivated, they will learn. They will own their own learning path, and all we need to do around them is to support them if and when they reach out, essentially, right? So that
Yeah,
I
I think
think,
it's very important. And also there's also another concept that I found from a course by Andrew, I think Andrew, in the very legendary figure in machine learning, is
yeah,
that like yeah, I think there's one thing he said I really liked. I don't know how possible it would be to implement. He said that future governments should provide a social safety net, but condition on learning. So people would be provide universal infrastructure, universal support, but given that they need to be learning. So I think
to
like
be learned.
that's I mean like that's it's, so it's like incentivized people to, if they learn, then they'll get all the safety nets for like employment or whatever. But of course, like that comes second from what you just said, that like if we are able to motivate people to learn, then like all the rest would be not a problem
Easier.
at all.
Yeah.
Easier,
A lot
much
easier.
easier, and much more beneficial as well. I mean, like if you're forced to learn, then things rarely stick into your head. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
you look at it, you study for the test, and when you get out of the test, you kind of like flush it away, pretty
Yeah.
much.
Yeah. So we need kind of a learning pull instead of a teaching push, if you can frame
Right,
it that way, I think,
right,
right?
right,
We
right,
want people to be motivated to learn. And then there may be
right.
some financial support
Which would be
around it.
supported, of course.
Yeah, yeah, that may be needed without our little thought experiment here, but it's definitely good to see all these building blocks that could be part of a community
Yeah,
driven.
and you could start with anything, right? It's like when people say they wanted children to read books, right? They say, some people say they could start from any kinds of book. It could be picture books, it could be like
Yeah,
cartoons and this sort of stuff. As long as it's a book, then you get them started, and they'll move on to other books. I think it's same for learning, because like people will like to learn on two things. I think this is personally my personal opinion, is that they like to learn two things. It's either the thing that they're good at, or the thing that they like.
yeah,
Those two, usually it's the same thing, so people usually like the things that they're good at, but it's not always the same thing. So sometimes you will like something that you're not good at, but you're really passionate about it. You'll have the motivation to learn. And once you're able to convince people to learn, and those kind of like either one of the two things, and then once they have the skill of learning, then you can basically apply it to anything else if they decided to learn about other stuff one day.
And they learn that they are actually good at learning.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you already find out a way to learn good about learning, right?
And now you
So
can
then,
apply that on another topic that at some point
yeah,
you will want to or have to learn. Yeah.
yeah.
That reminds me of an interesting dilemma. So if your child is really good at tennis and really hates math, for example,
Mm.
then some parents they will hire a math teacher and some will hire a tennis coach to make them even better at tennis. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yes, yes. I don't know. There's no right
So
or
you're
wrong.
asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. What would you do?
that's a very interesting question, and actually depends on, yeah, this I think this is a free choice because like it really depends on the mindset of the parents, and that I think that's also makes, each person different. I don't think there's a right or wrong answer. It always depends. But if I were, I mean, if I were the parent, I would need to gauge on the I think two things. First is the talent of my child, on how good he actually is at tennis, right? Is he national level? Is he school level? And second is on the resources I have. Like, do I have the resources to support him through the end, right? Do I have enough resources to, just to make him good at tennis? Because like you just have to be at least like national level in order to earn yourself a living and be able to retire at an early age. So if I do have or have the potential to have those resources, I'll probably go for the tennis coach. If the child is really good, they like he would not be stressed or he's so passionate about it or whatever. But at the same time, if my child is not at that like legendary level, I might just get him a tennis coach. Sorry, like a math coach so that like he gets by. Or I might hire a math coach anyway because like he'll get by at school. At least if one day he decides not to play tennis, then he can still go back to like the usual school system. So it's a trade-off, depending on the constraints. I think we can only optimize, with a certain set of constraints at that point. And also, but I think like what actually happens in real life, it also depends on the motivations of the people around the kid. Whether because like I think there are a lot of athletes whose like parents are really passionate about sports, or a lot of like artists whose parents are really passionate about those things, so they kind of like put all the resources in getting that, which is not wrong. I mean, and also parents who see more value, okay, you got to be a doctor first before a tennis player, might be. I think it might be a little bit more. I think sounds less not less romanticized, but in a lot of families where that happened, that actually turned out to be a better consequence for the kid. It's him or herself. So yeah, so it's an open problem. I think it's how you choose to live your life. It's totally open-ended. Yeah.
I agree. I was actually a tennis player, a tournament tennis player as a junior. And even with the
Right.
coach, which I got,
Yeah.
I couldn't make it far enough for somebody to actually pay me for playing tennis. So I could become an engineer, uh, which I'm very happy about today, by the way. But I love that. Just there's another factor that I haven't even thought about for this conversation, which is the environment, the learning
Mm.
environment as well.
Yeah.
And thinking about one of my own kids, he's on the autism spectrum, and he's the reason I got into trying to rethink the education system in the first place, because a school is a fantastic place for gathering knowledge and sharing knowledge and teaching. But if you don't like to be with a lot of people in the same room, it's a pretty nightmarish kind of place to be. And it was in our situation. So that was at least 2 years of homeschooling, with the tutor coming home for a couple of hours per week. And it turned out it was really easy to get ahead of what the school could teach in the same period of time. And but so the environment, the learning environment, what motivates you? Is it to be with a lot of people, or is it to work alone for most of the time and then seek the people you need to touch base with, your professor, your peers, whatever your unique preference, I think should play into this as well.
Yeah, and I really agree with that. Like I have a lot of, I think, like acquaintances, close family friends who are in the like the this um you know the minority spectrum, right?
Yeah,
So I think I'll share three cases, very interesting cases. So the first one is my primary school classmate who had dyslexia. So essentially, in Thai characters, you'll have the characters and you have things on top and things in the bottom, which this boy had problem reading things that has more than one level. So essentially, throughout fifth, from like kindergarten through fifth grade, he could not read any text in Thai. And so his parents thought he had autism. So basically, the school was kind of understanding to a point where they allow the boy to have a tutor with him and he became like ADHD and whatever. But then, like, the parents found out later when they moved him to an international school, he started studying English and they found out, oh, he could read English and like Japanese and Chinese and all the other languages with just one row.
yeah,
And so, and I
wow,
think like
that's
in that, yeah, and in that case, I think it's really, I think it becomes a little difficult on the parent where they need to, strive for resources and environment that are compatible for the child.
yeah,
And yeah, I mean, like kudos to the mother who,
yeah,
finally
yeah.
found a place for
Wow,
her child. And then like now the guy is just a normal person. Like he doesn't
yeah,
have
yeah,
like ADHD, autism, like he doesn't show signs of that because he didn't have autism in the first place, right? He was more on the dyslexia side.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So yeah. So the second case is another guy I met at my piano studio when I was young. So he's a grown guy. I mean, I met him when he was already 20 years old. He couldn't do anything. Well, I guess like academically he couldn't do anything except playing the piano, and he couldn't even read scores. He just looked at the teacher playing and he just mimics. But he really likes playing the piano, so he plays the piano like 8 hours a day and things like that. But at the same time, right, the inability to do academics doesn't mean he could not live a normal life. So essentially, I think he was sent to a school that are, specifically to train people with, disability in this area where he can, I mean, like you gotta be trained to be able to lead like a normal daily life. I think that's the most important thing. And the other things are just a bonus. So essentially this guy, even though he cannot read books, he can drive. I mean, like
yeah,
he can bring himself to school, he can drive, he can do all the normal things in life. And as same as the third case I was about to mention, is another family friend who was born with they had problems when they gave birth to him. So essentially his brain lacked like some oxygen. So he became like
yeah,
his IQ is very low and things like that. But at the same time, right, even he could not attend the normal school system, he could be trained to at least like live a normal, happy daily life, right?
yeah,
You don't have to force like the social notion of having to have the career and everything. All you want is for the person to be happy and be able to take care of themselves, right? I think that's kind of the essentials. The essential that many people forget. Like it's not about you being getting a job, a prestigious job, or like getting high salary, right? It's how you be able to live your life on your own and be
yeah.
happy about it. Yeah, that's
Fully,
kind of
fully
like
agree.
my
Yeah.
take on that.
Wow, very, very fascinating cases. I can recognize almost all of these examples in people I've met on my path for
Yeah.
sure. It's more common than we think, and no, the
Mm,
ideal goal in life is not, in everybody's case, to have a glamorous career and a top
yeah.
position somewhere. It's
Yeah.
one of the basic human skills is to feel that we contribute. And if we don't feel that we contribute, we feel terrible about ourselves.
Yeah.
But if
Yeah.
we feel we
Definitely.
contribute and are able to contribute, somebody may help us a little bit to get to the point where we can now contribute and feel we contribute. Now we have probably a thriving life, or at least
Yeah, definitely.
a life that we enjoy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. Like the third case that I mentioned, like their local community, like he was lucky that like the local community also kind of like takes care of him. So they invited
yeah,
him to be help them with their radio channel. So they'll, he will do kind of like
yeah,
interviews with people yeah, even though he's like, he's pretty much on like the other, not as competent as other people, but like if the community supports, then he could also feel that he could contribute to the community as well. And I think that's really important.
Yes, absolutely. Wow, very exciting. These are some of my favorite topics to explore. Um, but I want to just get jump back a bit to involve AI again in
Yeah, I know, right?
conversation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
like
yeah.
mess away with
And
all the education stuff.
yeah, and I want to respect your time today. So let me just rope back in AI and not least AI literacy. So the second point you mentioned in your roadmap to building this community-driven education system is something like curriculum or identifying what is it we need to learn. And if I say AI literacy for the global population should be on that list of what we need to learn, is that right, you think? Um,
Yeah,
could we, should we?
I mean, we have to. I think there's no way around it. That people have to. At least people have to know what it is, what it can. So I think three things. Like first is what it is, second is what it can cannot do, and third is what it should and should not do. All right. So I think like the most common problem that I get out of like at least like from the students I interact with is that like they don't know that information purely from AI is not based on facts. I think that's something that like people should know. And I have this like mistake from graduates from the first ranked university from Thailand submitting works that have fake references from ChatGPT, for example.
Yeah,
This should not be happening at all, right? Even for high schoolers, like even for everyone, they should not do this, but it still happens. So that I think that really emphasizes the importance of having a certain level of AI literacy that tells you that you like if you talk to a scammer for more than 10 seconds, your voice could be used to mimic you and do bad stuff. So I think like, literacy on the basics of it involved with daily life, people need to know about AI. Right. I think I don't care much about like that. I mean, like technical workings are important. I emphasize that a lot with my students because it will kind of like say, I think it's kind of like when you solve math problems, right? If you understand the derivation, yeah, derivation, then you don't have to remember as much as you don't have to remember as many examples that you need to. Like if you understand that ChatGPT are just spitting out like the next most likely words given the data it was trained on, then you will know automatically that whatever it spews out is not necessarily the truth, right? But so kind of like that sort of conceptual level, I think if it could be instilled, I think that would be great. But if that's not possible, at least like knowing what it cannot do and like what it should and should not do is something that everyone needs to know about.
absolutely, absolutely. So you also mentioned, and we'll soon come to wrapping up Pin, so you can go on
Yeah,
today.
this is
But
fine.
so I just want to touch on another thing you mentioned also. What is it we may need to learn before we get into the AI aspects and all that? And this is something that is a big priority in the work I do. It's about human development that comes first, but human development in a tech world is how I normally phrase it. So we live surrounded by tech, and that's never going away. Quite the contrary.
Yeah.
So we focus, or I focus in my work and our community focus on the human development and what is that. So that is also what I'm interested in, and we have been reading, going through all the research from World Economic Forum and all the big institutions and NGOs and the big consulting firms. What are the human skills that are important from now on and onwards in our civilization? And generally there seems to be four categories of human skills, and I've added another one because I'm a little bit of a disruptor and nobody cares. I add a fifth one, but these five categories, in my view, are adaptability skills, cognitive skills, interpersonal skills, self-leadership skills, and digital skills. And AI literacy falls into digital skills. So
What's the fifth one that you added?
it was adaptability skills
Mm.
because that's never been recognized as a top category of skills, really. But Darwin talked about it a long time ago. It's not survival of the fittest, but the most adaptable.
Adaptable,
Um,
yeah.
we need to constantly adapt, and we can see that wherever we look today. That there's at least it's important. For me, it was so important. It became a top skill in itself.
Yeah.
And there are entire frameworks that supports sub-dimensions that all contribute to our adaptability. That, by the way, involves analyzing our environment. Is it a supportive environment that allows us to adapt or not? Maybe it works against us. But I was just curious about if you know of any frameworks or any other frameworks that can support us in this combination of building AI literacy and AI skills and also our human skills. Is that something you have looked into?
So I've seen a few frameworks out there, which pretty much say things similar to what you said in terms of interpersonal skills, soft skills. Um, yeah, about adaptability, I personally agree. It was a model of my middle school where it said that like the ability to adapt determines your success in life,
Yeah,
which I
there you
really
go.
took to heart. I took to heart the moment I walked out of the school.
Yes, you did. I'm
I just
adapting.
like
I'm
crossing the
out of
street to the high school. Yeah, I crossed the street to the high school, looking back in my previous school and saw that sign. I was like, oh shit.
here. Yeah,
Anyways,
there you go.
anyway, so I think the other important thing I really emphasize on that, but that respond particularly to generative AI is critical thinking skills and the
Yeah,
ability to figure out what's real and what's not, what's right or what's logical and what's not. I think that will be a very important skill that people will need and would actually not be able to live without. Because like in the future, it will be really hard for us to know what's real and what's not anymore. I mean, current day, we're already being manipulated by AI, right? Via like what we see on the internet is all manipulated by these big algorithms, right? So we're already being manipulated. So our minds, we already need a certain level of critical thinking skills, but on the next level, it's not manipulating just what we see; it's manipulating the veritas, even like the truth of the thing. Whether is the text AI generated, if are the images AI generated, or are they real? Or are they AI generated but based on real human motivation? So the ability to connect the dots and tease that out and choose to believe in what logically falls in place will be something that is critical thinking will be very, very critical in the coming future. And I think that's probably the one main area that I really emphasize, given the world of generative AI in particular.
excellent. Um, I recognize all that. It makes so much sense. When it comes to critical thinking, one of the observations we're making is when you study AI, it's a complicated topic. You can go as deep as you want to, also through the technical layers. But when you do begin to study AI, you need to analyze complex systems. So there are some analytical skills you will develop. Critical thinking comes in because you realize this is a statistic game. It's a probability game, how text comes out of a generative AI. So you need to challenge what's coming out. So you develop your critical thinking while you're developing your AI literacy skills at the same time. This is very exciting that the human skills and the AI skills are kind of walking hand in hand in that way.
Right,
Uh,
right. I think like the ability to use AI well, you need, your human skills. But I think like the good news is that these like generative AI tools would actually help you on your interpersonal skill as well as like, the first practice. You could practice with AI on what you should say, what you would respond to before actually practicing with real people. So I think if it's used in the right way, then, it can actually be, work together hand in hand in order to develop the human capability.
Awesome. Awesome. That fills me with hope, Pin.
Yes, yes, there's a lot of hope. I think there's a lot of hope with these tools. I mean, our life is getting much easier, and you'll notice with the newer generations that some kids are just amazing. I mean, they are able to do what we're able to do in our 20s when they're just like in before even they're 2 digits year old, right? So it's because of the resources that are available, but at the same time, I think that also gives us a very dangerous scenario where those who have the resources, those who are active, those who are vigilant will become very, very good, versus those who fall behind will actually fall behind even further. So I think that's what the I think that the government or the support system or the community needs to come in and make sure that like people who fall behind don't just fall behind even further.
Yeah, that's a growing skill gap, which
Yeah, it's a
everybody,
growing skills gap.
all reports point to that growing skill gap,
Yeah, yeah,
and
it's already
financial.
seen in students. Yeah, financial disparity. I think it's on the intellectual disparity that's the most important, because from what I see from my students, right, from the well, not at Sasin, but because Sasin only teach graduate students, but like on the other
Yes.
side in Chulalongkorn University, where I interact with undergraduate students as well, you'll see very clear like two groups of students. The ones who are vigilant will be able to use AI to, improve their capability, versus those who are not vigilant, then even though they have the similar resources, their family background are pretty much similar. But if just the fact that they are not actively learning, their skills fall behind. They'll be, uploading papers into chat GPT, copy paste whatever the GPT tells and send it to the teacher without even reading them, let alone like internalizing concepts and ideas, and that is very worrisome.
Yeah. And that's easily the outcome if also we're not motivated in the first place. Yeah,
I know
isn't it?
students will be like, write an essay about so, and that is also another thing I wanted to add, is that like I also see it from my MBA students, because I make everyone write a reflection of the class materials before they come to class, and they can ask questions about whatever in class that they want. Right. So pre-chat GPT, I will hear the student voices coming out of the text, versus like post chat GPT, post generative AI. The texts are it's very difficult for me to grade, because I usually enjoy hearing the student voices that come out. But now the texts are really dry. Like it's all
Yeah.
grammatically correct. It's very smooth. It's very resourceful, but it's dry.
And nobody would talk that way.
Right, right, right. It's very dry, and it's very difficult for me to, grade it, because it's really boring. Like it's
Yeah.
all the same text. I don't want to read this. I know this comes out of a chat, but I don't learn about the students. I don't
Yes.
learn about who the student is. And that's
So
a very
nobody
sad
wins.
part.
Yes. Nobody
Right,
wins
right.
from that.
It's a very sad part, that like I usually enjoy getting to know my students from what they write, which I don't after, using the AI. I barely, I mean, and the amount of student I learn reduced drastically.
Yeah. I can imagine. Time is flying. I don't know uh, if I can ask
You
you
wanna?
one last
Yeah,
thing.
sure. Yeah, of course. I don't have back-to-back meetings, so maybe
Okay,
one
okay.
question should
So
be fine.
it's just another short, fun exercise, a little in the same style as the first one we did.
Right.
So, but let's keep it short. So here's another thought experiment, just to challenge our assumptions about AI and education. So imagine now we time travel. We time travel to the year of 2050. And at this point, I have no idea if this timeline is going to be correct. We'll wait and see. But in this thought experiment, it's 2050, and AI has now evolved to become a conscious entity that's capable of experiencing emotions, creative thoughts, and all that we today think is a unique human feature. Um, Now, you are still fortunately, the Minister of Human Development in our government. Thank goodness.
Oh, good for
So
me. I haven't retired yet.
you haven't retired yet. No, thanks to longevity and you being
Yeah, of
forever young.
course.
and the best one for the job. So now you are tasked with designing an educational exchange program where AI systems learn from human teachers and humans learn from AI teachers. So there's this twist. So AI systems learn from human teachers and humans learn from AI teachers. What do you think would be important principles that should be established to ensure that this exchange benefits both the humans and the AIs in terms of our growth and development?
Hmm. I guess the gist of the question is essentially what humans should learn from AI and what AI should learn from humans,
Yeah.
right? I guess that's the gist of the question because like I first was gonna argue otherwise that like AI was kind of like modeled after humans anyway. Um,
Hmm.
so that's interesting. So I guess like on the terms of AI learning from humans, it's fairly what we do today, right? We try to model the our world or our view of the world so that the AI can assimilate and be able to give results that are correspond to the human, how the human world works. Versus like I think what humans can learn from AI is kind of like the how to be more comprehensive in your thinking. And that actually, well, that doesn't really happen in 2050. That actually only happens in 2025, where you can put in scenarios. Because like we respond to scenarios based on our experience, which is only one experience, right? Versus the AI have pretty much the internet experience. So that's combined from every other people. So by learning from AI, you expand your horizon in how you think about all the various issues. Of course, it will be biased, depending on how you prompt the AI or on what the data the AI learned. But at least there will be, more than one perspective that you can learn from the AI. But and I guess like what the AI can take from humans, like quick thoughts are like on how the world works and how they can understand the human more in order to work with humans more seamlessly. I think that would be my short answer to the exchange program.
All right. Time to get started drafting out that program.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have ChatGPT do that for me, or maybe DeepSeek. I'm finding
Yes.
a lot of fun playing with that platform.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Yeah.
They all are. Every day there's a new
Yeah, there's a new
winner.
player getting like the winner. Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
So I was just like, I tell my students the day you walk out of class, like what I already taught you are already obsolete.
Yes, it is.
So you have to keep learning to beat machine learning.
Exactly. Which is an it's an exciting challenge, isn't it, for
Yeah,
all
it
of
is.
us?
It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
A lot of people
Yes.
like it.
Pinbin, I want to thank you again for your time. I know you also need to move on in your program today. It's been incredibly inspiring and a great help to the work we do in the Educate for Life community to create this community-driven education scenario for those that want that. And we like to be, complementing the existing education system where it makes sense and be there for those that need an alternative to it. So you have given us so much food for thought and inspiration today. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so happy to be able to catch up with you again here through this conversation.
Mm. Yeah, thank you very much, Lars, for the opportunity. And I'm really glad to hear, that you're doing what you're doing to make the community better via education. So I'm really glad that I can have a chance to contribute to what you do.
Thank you.
Thank
Have
you.
a great rest of your day and speak to you soon.
All right, you too.